Hi, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful week. So, as a reminder, I'm playing the unicorns. We're trying to cover everything I wished I knew as a founder when I was starting out 24 years ago. And this has been separated into three kind of chunks or bunches. You have one, just lessons on how do you fundraise, how do you pick an idea, how do you evaluate the idea. Two, it's really been interviews with authors and people who have written books and like lessons learned. And then three, of course, exchanges with extraordinary founders. And today we fall in this category where we're going to be joined by Laura Behrens, who is the founder of Shippo, which is now a unicorn. So let's get started with any further ado. Welcome to episode 32 of Playing the Unicorns, a conversation with Laura Behrens. So, Laura, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I heard we're also live, so I'm like, thank you everyone for dialing in live, and I'm looking forward to chatting.
So why don't we start on your origin story before we delve deeper into the story of Shippo and everything you learned along the way.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Germany. I actually came to San Francisco as a summer intern. I have never really been to San Francisco before. I was working in other tech startups back then in Switzerland, actually. And I just really wanted to see what San Francisco is like. Like I was reading about it on TechCrunch. It sounded like this mythical place where all of like the big startups were getting started, where the big ideas were floating around. And I just decided to apply on AngelList to a bunch of different startups to see if one of them would take me as a summer intern. And unfortunately, I didn't get a ton of responses. And then by pure luck, and I think like a lot of my story is basically like a lot of good luck. Like I ran into a founder at a startup event in Switzerland, and that founder went through YC himself, and he was telling me all about it. And at some point, he just offered if I give him my resume, he would forward that resume to the YC mailing list. And that was how the story began. Like I followed up, sent him my resume. He sent it to the YC mailing list. Overnight, I had I think 27 different emails in my inbox with people inviting me to interviews. And I interviewed with a bunch of them and ended up at a startup called LendUp. And LendUp at that point in time was like a small fintech startup doing socially responsible payday loans straight out of Y Combinator. And I just showed up in San Francisco and started interning for them in their marketing and customer acquisition team. So that
Wow,
was
the
really
power of the
like
YC
the my
distribution lists, I
yeah.
never occurred to me it would be that effective. That's amazing.
It was really, really effective. And I think that's one of the things that I love about Silicon Valley as well. People are so open-minded and so willing to share their networks. I think that if I didn't get that sort of introduction back then, I wouldn't have found my way into that network and gotten that summer internship job. And then when I started at LendUp, is kind of a very similar story. I was super inspired just by the founder's vision for disrupting the payday loan industry. And then it is very easy to share ideas, very easy to work on things that I had in mind as long as they were driving revenue numbers. And I was also able to just brainstorm with the founder about like possible other startup ideas that I would have. I was quite open that I wanted to start something myself. And when I then came up with I can't actually, Shippo was born out of a totally different idea. Like first, I didn't have any good ideas at all. And I decided to just start an online store. And I started that online store together with my now co-founder, Simon. We started selling a few products on the internet. It was a side business. I did that while still working at LendUp. And then from there, realized that shipping is really hard. Like it was incredibly difficult for our e-commerce business. We just had to go like during lunch break to the post office to hand over our packages. And then the APIs by like UPS, FedEx, DHL, they're pretty clunky and not as user friendly. So from there, I realized like shipping is pretty difficult. It shouldn't be as difficult, especially compared to using like a Stripe or a Shopify, like other tools we're using for online business. And then I told this to Sasha, the founder, and he always like had this like pretty cool kind of like motto, which was build something that's a painkiller, not a vitamin. And it resonated. And like shipping is such a big pain point for e-commerce businesses. It's just every single e-commerce store needs to ship, that we decided to like get rid of, or like leave our online store be and focus full time on building shipping software. So that kind of leads me to where I am right now. Like Shippo is a shipping software company. We're building the easiest to use, most delightful shipping platform for SMBs, making sure that every single e-commerce business can ship like retail giants. It starts from pre-purchase and ends at post-purchase, making sure that every step along the way is like well covered, and our SMBs are competitive and can reach consumer
So
expectations.
actually, first of all, the fact that your idea came from personal pain point, I think is rather common. I think there are three sources of business ideas in the world, and this is probably the most meaningful one, because if it's something you face, more likely than not, some other people may be facing it, though you probably should verify that, but in your case, it's definitely true. And then because you want to fix it, like you're much more passionate and mission driven about it than other ideas that could be out there. So I think that that resonates in terms of like where some of the very best ideas in the world come from. And in terms of like when you think of like the future of work, I think helping people do the things they don't like to do so they can focus on their core also makes a lot of sense, right? Like imagine
Yeah,
you're a little
yeah,
Shopify merchant, and your passion is like whatever, selling face cream, and you know everything about like sourcing it and
yeah,
selling it and marketing it. Like dealing with shipping is probably not very high in the reason you got into the business that you got into. And so actually not dealing with
yes.
the stuff you really hate doing, makes a lot of sense. And so having companies like Shippo to do it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think the other important part is also it is a problem that all e-commerce businesses are facing. It doesn't make sense for every single e-commerce store to try to figure out their own solution to the same problem. So offering like an API layer, an API solution that is fairly customizable so that everyone can tweak it to whatever their custom shipping setup is, but like the foundation is the same, just a connectivity layer to all different shipping providers, that just makes a ton of sense. And then aggregating all of these businesses together provides us with really good economies of scale. That's part of our business model as well. We have a flywheel. The more packages we ship, the more leverage we have with the shipping providers. And then that allows us to have better relationships there, better shipping rates, better access to products with the shipping providers. And then all of the SMBs can benefit from like
Most of
being
your
part of
clients on
that flywheel.
Shopify, or are you starting to get larger clients as well? Or what does the business look like today?
Yeah. So when we started the business, it is actually quite a typical like marketplace problem. We've got this chicken and egg problem because if we don't have shipping providers working with us, our customers can't ship. But our shipping providers don't want to work with us unless we have customers and we can give them something. And they of course care about shipping volume. So at the beginning we had to solve that problem. We've always like the platform is a multi-carrier platform. Like one of our main premises is that our customers, they want optionality. They want to be able to use all kinds of different shipping providers, and that should be easy for them. However, on day one, we decided to not solve like chicken and egg problem for all shipping providers at the same time. We decided to just double down on one shipping provider. That was our first partner, the USPS. And then from there, we started acquiring some customers. At the beginning, the smallest customers, and then over time we're able to start growing our customers in both in terms of customer base but also in terms of size, and then adding other shipping providers as well, now that we've proven out that this works and we've got volume to bring to the table. Right now, like our main customer base is still like SMB businesses, people selling on Shopify, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, GoDaddy. So across the board, all of these different platforms. And then we've also started growing to more of the mid-sized customers, or high growth customers. A typical startup customer would fall in there. We've got a bunch of good ones, like Bamba Socks and Aesop, the soap brand. So yeah, some of Ollie's, the dog food company, Farmer's Dogs. So a bunch of these like mid-sized, high growth e-commerce businesses have become a good target
That's really
audience
cool.
as well.
So lesson learned here in terms of like building a multi-sided marketplace. You started with a supply, you got one, and then you made sure you delight them by getting some volume
Yes.
in front of them, and then you started scaling the supply again once you have enough
Yes.
volume, and kept keeping both inside to frankly delight both. But I think for most people in the world, I think the recommendation hold, I would start with the supply because the supply is financially motivated to be on the platform. And so even though you may not have much volume to begin with, if you tell them, hey, we may have clients,
Yeah.
join us, it doesn't cost you anything, I think you're gonna succeed. Just don't drown your platform with supply.
Yes. Yes, no, I think that's exactly right. I don't think this would have worked if we tried to like spread ourselves thin and negotiate with a bunch of different shipping providers on day one. It's really important to double down with one shipping provider, really prove our value prop, and then we're able to bring those numbers and the proof points to other shipping providers later on as well. And we didn't start from scratch with other shipping providers because we had that success
Cool.
story to
By the way, we
tell.
have Jeff Clavier from Uncork who says, "Suppled upon this, randomly checking Facebook. Love Laura." So, is he an investor?
He is an investor, yes. Jeff he was our first investor together with Boris Wirtz. So a longtime investor, a good friend by now. And hi, Jeff, if you're still watching.
Cool. So, how did you go from, I don't know what scale you're at today, but like, obviously there's been many evolutions in the life cycle of a business from, it was, oh, I'm solving my little problem for my own startup, and then decided to pivot to providing it to others, to having one client or having many others. Maybe you can walk us through the different stages, both in terms of like organization, fundraising, complexity along the way, and yeah, get a sense of where you're at today.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we started the business, it was me, my co-founder. We had a few like jacks of all trades working with us, and I think in the earliest stages, it's really everyone's doing everything. So I was doing customer support. My co-founder was doing finance, and I was doing biz dev and sales and fundraising. So just everyone's doing everything, and I think that's really good actually at the beginning to get that sort of exposure. I would say the most like important part for me early on was that both me and my co-founder, we both did customer support ourselves. We had that strong relationship with the customer. We had that tight feedback loop, and that really helped with like product development, knowing what to build. And also like it helped with word of mouth. Like we were actually really transparent with our customers, telling them that we're a small startup. It's just me and Simon. And if you like the product, please leave us a review and please talk to your friends about it. And they actually did. So that really like helped quite a lot early on. And
Actually, pause for a second.
then
So
I
I
think, by the way, in
love that
terms of
advice. So
customer,
I've always run customer service for the first few months of every startup I've built, because you actually get to know the customers and understand their pain point, and that honesty of like, hey, we're a little startup, but we would love your help. It like there's no reason to hide that you're tiny.
yes,
It's the reality, and people are friendly and they want to help. Even not just people in the Silicon Valley community.
yeah.
So yeah, I think both fantastic advice.
Yeah, and I think especially working with like small mid-sized businesses, I think if you're working with an enterprise customer, you might want to come
Yes.
across bigger than you actually are. But if you're working with another SMB, it's like they understand your pain point. It's the empathy. They want to help you out as well, and they actually like talking directly to the founder, to the owner. And it's like having a few of those strong customers early on is like a really good relationship. And then, by the way, talking about like what customer to sell to early on, we just talked about the flywheel at the beginning of the more packages we ship, the more leverage we have with the shipping providers. So at the very beginning, I was actually like my galaxy brain was actually thinking, okay, let's get like a really large customer, and then we'll have a ton of shipping volume, and like we'll be able to do this faster. But it turns out like a really large customer does not want to use an unproven product, not for something that's as like instrumental and as critical as shipping. So that we were running against a wall there. It wasn't working, and we decided, okay, let's start with the SMBs. They have the biggest pain point. Like they're competing against the big guys. Shipping is hard for them, and being like that worked much better. So like that was how we started to focus on the SMB segment. And then over time, like we raised, so Jeff Clavier, who we just talked about, he did our seed round. Back then, seed rounds were much smaller than today. I was just talking to someone who's telling me about their giant seed round. We did a 2.5 million seed round in, I want to say 2015, something like that. And then
So wait, you
business,
didn't
I
do
think at
YC,
the beginning
even though
had
you
a
had
ton of
such an amazing
organic
experience
growth.
going through YC first.
Oh, we tried. It
Oh, you
was
didn't get
not
in.
for the lack of
Okay.
trying.
Well, I'm sure they regret that decision.
We didn't get in. No, and I think one of the is actually, I think the feedback I remember pretty clearly, like you don't forget feedback like that. The feedback was, what if the market consolidates? What if like the shipping providers, they all like buy each other up, or they buy the smallest guys up, and like a few dominant shipping providers with like a monopoly or a duopoly, and then you don't need a product like Shippo anymore connecting to a bunch of different shipping providers. And I think that feedback is like back then that for sure could have happened. Over time, we saw that the exact opposite was happening. Like there are new shipping providers up and coming, and a lot of startups are getting into like a lot of startups are getting started in the logistics space as well. They're like same day shipping services, next day shipping services. So that market has become fragmented, and that was for sure beneficial for us. But yeah, we couldn't have known that back then, and it was just the market dynamics of more people sell on the internet, and the existing shipping providers can't keep up with the capacity. So more vendors need to emerge. And then from kind of the seed stage, I think there was like Paul Graham has this great thing of like how does he call it, the valley of despair or something like that, where everything's going well and you've got a ton of organic growth, and then at some point in time you're going through this really difficult time. And that difficult time like happened to us as well. And if you're a founder watching, I think the good news is like I think it happens to almost every startup. I haven't like I think it's very normal. What happened to us at some point was organic growth was started to plateau. And you can only go so far with organic growth. Like if you're getting to revenue numbers that are big, like they're growing bigger and bigger, it's harder to grow on a bigger like revenue base. And we didn't invest in marketing or sales early enough. We never had to. We just had our customers with like great word of mouth, leaving great reviews on the internet, more customers finding us. And then suddenly we realized, like, why are we not growing anymore? And that was painful because like building a marketing and like sales motion takes a while. Like it's not an overnight thing. It took us, I want to say, almost a year to start finding customer acquisition
And you
channels
were
that we were
sales
able to
driven
scale. So that was like,
or marketing driven or both?
you know,
Marketing driven.
marketing driven. So I mean, at the beginning, we tried everything. So that's I think another reason why it took a little longer. We didn't know, like, and we started experimenting with what could work. In hindsight, like for SMVs, inbound
Yeah.
engine just works really well. So we've that was like what stuck for us. And we now have a pretty strong demand gen team focusing on all of the inbound channels. We've gotten pretty good at content, just making sure that when customers search for shipping, they find us. And then we also, instead of having an outbound sales team, we have an activations team. So hand-holding inbound customers into paying customers. And that's the motion that worked. But yeah, it took us roughly, I want to say, a year to figure that out. And in that year, it was making sure that we're like watching burn. We're not running out of money before we've proven a few customer acquisition channels that would work. And I think in hindsight, like my big lesson learned there was to never wait on like finding new customer acquisition channels until existing, like you need to do that. You need to find new customer acquisition channels while your other customer acquisition channels are still working. You can't wait until they stop working. And at some point, any customer acquisition channel will just stop working, or stop working in the sense it'll lead to slower growth just because the numbers are getting so big. So now we're in a mode where like we're constantly experimenting, constantly trying to find new customer acquisition channels, and I think that's a good mode to be in, because again, you don't want to wait until growth slows to experiment and find new channels. So we found a few, that leads me like back to the story. We found a few customer acquisition channels that were able to scale. We raised another round of financing. That must have been our C. And then I think roughly at that time or right after that, the pandemic started. And it was one of those moments where like, things happened really fast. Everyone just like, we didn't know what to expect. And first, like, I think we're a transactional business. So like we grow when our customers grow. First, like nothing really happened. And then very soon, suddenly our customers were growing extremely fast. And that was because more people were buying on the internet, and as they couldn't go into stores anymore. And as they were buying on the internet, like our customers shipped more, they sold more, and they shipped more. And then we also had a big influx of new customer signups because every business that was previously an offline business switched into becoming an online business. That was then that was roughly 2022. Like that entire year was just crazy.
What did the
And
business really
now,
shrink first in like the scary moment of like April, March 2020, or before re-exploding, or did it just keep going, including in that period?
yeah, so it wasn't shrinking at that time, but it was a moment where we were for sure discussing, like internally as a management team, of how do we make sure we, if we have to, how do we make sure that we're getting through this? And there were a few conversations of, okay, do we need to
Yeah.
cut costs? Do we need to stop hiring? What's going on here? How do we get through this? And then we realized, actually, our customers need us more than ever. They're growing faster than ever. And we went into the exact opposite mode. We doubled that team in 2020. We doubled the team again last year just to keep up with the demand. And then I think the other like difficult thing for a founder to do is, like, that was also the year when I decided to like build out the leadership team one more time. And it is hard to do because a lot of people who get you from 0 to 1 might not be the people who get you from 1 to 100. And it's a difficult transition to go through because these are all the people that have been in the trenches with you early on. But it's necessary as you're going through the next mode of scale. So that was, I'm still in the middle of building out that leadership team, but I've made a ton of hires, and
And for the
I
people
think
that
5 hires
were
in the
there 0 to
last
1 that
18.
didn't scale with the business, do you find new roles for them, or do you let them go, or how does that work?
It depends. It really depends on what they want, like what's best for the people as well. Like a lot of people who take a business from 0 to 1, they love that and they want to go back again and do it one more time, and they should. So we've had that happen. Like we've had that with a few of our team members. Other team members, they like really love the business, and we find other roles in the company where they can do the 0 to 1 again, because like some functions have scaled, like have grown to a stage where they're ready to scale, and then there are new functions in the business that are still from 0 to 1 stage. Like there's always something in a startup that's at the 0 to 1 stage. So
That makes sense.
we've had both happen to us. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, now, I mean, this year, or at the like latter half of this year, like e-commerce has seen a little bit of headwinds because of the supply chain crisis. So that's something, again, we're a transactional business, so it's something that's affecting our customers, and we're trying to make sure that we're just getting them through Christmas smoothly because of all of
But
these
you're just
supply
doing
chain
delivery for them
issues.
once they've had a sale, so you're not getting the products to them to begin with. So you're just suffering from the
That's
supply
right.
chain crisis. Is not It's indirectly impacting you, so it's to directly impacting you. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah. So there are two things. I mean, the supply chain crisis is like there's so many steps in the supply chain, and it's like very broad to say there's just like one crisis. There are lots of small crises happening. But yes, I think supply, like inventory, can come to the U.S. That's one challenge. But then even as it's getting to the U.S., it like the trucking industry is having a shortage
Mm.
of truck drivers, and then as we're in the warehouse, like we only take care of shipping when it's in the warehouse and it's going out of the warehouse directly to the consumer. That's when the last mile is what we take care of. And then in that case, like it is often just our customers don't have enough inventory,
Yeah.
so they can't sell as much. Or we've also seen that like there's been a little bit of a shift back to offline purchasing because consumers want to make sure they're getting a product in time. They want to like be extra sure around like the holiday seasons. And then like even this holiday season, I think like last mile delivery providers are like a bit concerned
Mm.
about whether or not they have enough like delivery people, truck drivers. There's been just a labor
Do you do any of
shortage
the
there as
picking,
well.
packing, warehousing, or you come after that? You get UPS go pick up the package, but it's already been picked, packed, warehouse, etc., and then do the last mile
Yeah.
delivery.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a lot of customers and partners that are warehouses. So for example, ShipBop is one of our partners, Flex, Deliver. So we have a bunch of threads that are using our API in their warehouse, but we're not doing any of the warehousing ourselves or the picking and packing. We're the routing engine that makes sure that the right shipping provider picks up the right package, that that our customers are choosing the most optimal shipping provider, that tracking numbers are there, returns are being facilitated.
And you're offering
That's where we
same day
come in.
delivery as well. Like, I mean, Amazon and a big chunk of the industry seems to be going into these faster and faster
Mhm.
delivery modalities.
Yeah. Yeah, on that, I think you're right. Like it's only going
Yeah.
into one direction faster and faster. For our SMB businesses, what I typically try to tell them is, it is hard to compete in terms of speed, and I would rather have them make sure that they set the expectations right. I think that's all that matters. Like if you set customer expectations that something will take 3 days to arrive, you have to just make sure it arrives within 3 days. And you have to be upfront that this is something that will take 3 days or 5 days. And then meeting that expectation, having the tracking updates along the way, making sure that everything is just exactly what the consumer expected. We have a bunch of carriers on the platform that are able to do next day delivery, so that we have a bunch of those carriers as well. But it is
We have a
more
question from
expensive.
Lucian Avadani. Um, how long did it take you?
Mhm.
When did you become a unicorn? And was that one of the goals at the beginning of this journey? And was that greatly
Mhm.
accelerated by the explosion of e-commerce during COVID?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I don't think becoming a unicorn was like an explicit goal. Like even on our end, there wasn't even an explicit goal to start like a tech company. We started like an e-commerce store and then kind of got into shipping and got into building shipping software. And then from there, like I think early on at least, we were in the mindset of let's just like survive another day. And let's make sure we get more customers, that we do this right, everything's breaking. Like we need to make sure that our product works. And then I don't think we set out thinking about what could be possible down the road. And eventually, like we started realizing this is actually it's a really big problem. And then that pie is continuously growing. More e-commerce businesses are getting started every day. And then it is not just a US problem, it is a global problem, and it's actually possible to build a giant company in the space. But when we started building this, it wasn't as if we like deliberately sought out a space that would be this big. It's kind of just good fortune that we found a problem in a pretty big space to solve. It took us a while. Like it wasn't like because of this marketplace problem, it wasn't like an overnight success. Like we started it. I want to say it took us 6 years to become a unicorn, and it's because these flywheels they start
Yeah.
kicking in over time. Like you really need to get those flywheels going in order for the like it's a business that becomes easier with scale. It is so hard to like get the momentum going early on. And then about what was the other part of the question? Oh, about the pandemic and whether that helped us considerably. I want to say it for sure made investors more interested in e-commerce enablement tools. So in that sense, it might have helped. The pandemic just accelerated a trend that was already going on. It wasn't like e-commerce wasn't started because of the pandemic. It was businesses were moving online no matter what, and they just moved online faster. And some of these new shopping behaviors got formed during the pandemic that then like are now here to stick around. But I think it's right now it's 15 like e-commerce is 15% of total addressable market. It's still in a fairly early stage, and just getting that to 20%, 30% is like giant. So I want to say it's like for sure accelerated, but not entirely due
So
to the
what's
pandemic.
next for you? I mean, you mentioned internationalization. Are you global already, or is that coming soon? Or should we expect a massive Tiger Global type mega round in the coming months? Or an IPO, or what's next?
Yeah. So let's see. For us, there are a few things that are top of mind for me. So it starts with, we have been, up until almost like very recently, we've been a US centric business. And it's always been like my vision to build like shipping is a global thing. It's not like people buy on the internet and they don't know where they're buying from. Like they could be seeing a store, a website that is across the country. They could be seeing one that's across the globe, like in a totally different country. And then shipping is that connecting layer or connecting path between where the store is and where the consumer is. And yeah, so I think it makes so much sense for a shipping software business to be a global business. And with our most recent rounds of financings, like we're able to make that vision come true. So we're now like aggressively going after European shipping providers to build that true, like that first global network of shipping providers out there. And then part of the reason why we're doing that is also because we've been partnering quite successfully with platforms and marketplaces that are already international. So like a platform that has, or a marketplace that has customers all around the world, our value prop to them is like, if you integrate the Shippo API, you're able to offer your merchants shipping tools no matter where they are. And that is part of why we're going international, selling our platform, selling our API to platforms and marketplaces. And then that allows us to then like acquire merchants directly in those countries as well. So yeah, these are, I think, the three next steps, like going international, more platforms and marketplaces, and then growing our US business, both domestically, but also in the new countries.
Biggest lessons learned along the way?
Oh man, I think hiring is a big lesson to learn. I don't know, like it doesn't, at least for me, it didn't come natural. Like how do you interview someone and assess within a very short amount of time whether or not that's a good person you want to work with? And then it is such a big risk to take. Like once you've hired someone, they're in the company, you can get rid of them, but that is like painful too, not something you want to do. So I think early on made a bunch of hiring mistakes where I just looked at resumes and people were at large companies like Google and Facebook and Amazon, is looking at those resumes thinking to myself like, well, if they're good enough for Google, they must be like excellent for us too. And it turns out that the profile that like a large company is looking for, or someone who might succeed at a large company, is very different from someone who's like successful at a small company. So those were some good lessons learned early on. And then, by the way, it changes over time as well. Like now we might be able to attract a few people from much larger companies who can then be actually very successful and very helpful at the stage that we're at right now. So every few months you need to update your mental model of who you're actually looking for, who can help you raise the bar at the company that you have become in the meantime. But yeah, I think the hiring part is always the hardest. And then I have more recently also just started having like other founders who are further along help me interview, and that's been super helpful. And then I've also started just meeting other people that are not up for hire, but they're the kind of profile that I'm looking for, just to get to know what that would feel like, what they're thinking about, what talking to a person like that feels like, to be able to pattern match when I
think that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, the type of people you need are really so fundamentally different, right? Like in the 0 to 1 phase, you need jack of all trades, and they don't need to have industry expertise. You don't necessarily need processes. But pretty soon, you probably want like a chief person officer or an HR person. At some point, you need your finances in go into place. You need your VP finance, eventually a CFO to get ready to go public, and when you're larger. And today, those bigger company people actually probably have a role to play, right? Like in terms of getting processes and reporting and budgeting, etc., which the 0 to 1 people probably suck at and hate doing.
Yeah. And then, by the way, there is one thing that I think is a lesson learned for me, and I wasn't successful doing this, but talking to other startup founders, like they've had much more, they were able to hold the ground. Like I wish I didn't give out titles early on. I wish we could just call people head of or something like that instead of giving VP titles right away. It just really really hard to layer people when they've already had that sort of title. And yeah, again, I wasn't successful doing that. I had to give out those titles to attract some of that talent. But I've heard other founders be good at it, so I don't know how they do it, but I wish I didn't. I wish I
You have a
didn't get our
question from
titles early on.
Glokis. So first of all, I agree, right? Like the problem is if someone is SVP or whatever, and then later, of course, they're not the right person, so you need to put
Yes.
someone above them. And the idea that they
Yes.
go from SVP to now they're an
Yeah.
associate or a director is really, really, really hard. So
Yeah.
yeah, make someone the head of the category
Yeah.
versus the VP or SVP or whatever. I totally agree with this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've also made the mistake, by the way, that you
Yeah. And
mentioned
then
of like hiring really good people that were not at the right stage, both too early and too late. So yeah.
yeah, and then I think once you give out one title, everyone else will
Yeah.
want a title as well. So that's the other hard thing. And then like it'll be an anchor. Like other people will look at this person being a VP and they're
Yeah.
like, well, I should be a VP too. And then the mess
So we have a
starts.
question from
Yeah.
Glokis. You're like this one, this is also highly complimentary. Shippo is a shipping service company decides to keep integrity front and center. Branding the company as passionate, optimistic, diverse, and philanthropic. Do you find this approach of business with integrity differentiates Shippo in a way that provides value to your customers and partners and that helps with customer acquisition and maintaining long-term relationships equal to the services falls? You recall, is that one of your like marketing people putting this question? Do you recall a customer that came to Shippo because of its integrity, especially if you can beat the competitor's rate?
Wow. I mean, I don't think it's one of my marketing people, but if this is looking for a job, like please let me know. No, let's see. I think I am flattered that I don't think we've done super well in terms of branding. I think we can do much better. It's like in 2022, like one of the marketing goals is actually to figure out branding both from just for the company but also employee branding. I'm glad that is like good stuff is already out there. And by the way, as we're starting like as we were thinking about just the name and like what to call the business, like back then I was quite inspired by MailChimp, and like we deliberately went for something that was kind of MailChimp-esque. I was working in customer acquisition at LendUp and I was using MailChimp quite a lot there. And it's just, it's a terribly boring thing to do to like send out mass emails, but you log into to that dashboard, there's that little chimpanzee is wearing like a hat, and it's just fun. It's delightful, and that's what we wanted for our product as well. Kind of similar. Customers probably like dread the complexity of shipping. They're afraid they might spend too much money. It's complicated, and then we want to make sure that when they log in, they're actually like enjoying themselves, maybe even smiling. That the details there are helping them relax and helping them feel cared for. But wait, remind me, like I just heard all the
Can you
compliments. I
recall a
didn't hear the
customer that came
question.
to Shippo because of its integrity?
Oh, a customer that came to Shiva. I actually, I don't know if that has happened, but what happens a lot is, talking about customer support and how important that is. Again, like customer support people, they're the ones representing your brand. So you can like put anything you want on your website and saying like Shippo is a high integrity company, but if the customer support people are not acting that way, like that lived experience of the merchant using us is just affected by that. So I think we've done quite a lot of work making sure that our customer support is top notch, that we like respond to our customers in like a high integrity way. If there's something we can't do, then we just tell them that. And that we are consultative as well, and just professional consultative, and that we like really put the customer
Totally
front
agree
and
with that.
center.
Like it pisses me
fun.
off so much when like these tech companies, it's all like bots that you're trying to interact to. There's no person you can interact with, and you can't, and they don't like customer care is like it's part of your sales and marketing. It's like part of your competitive advantage if you do it right. And so many companies are like, oh, this is a cost
Yeah.
center. Let's try to like cut costs as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. If like customer support people need to be passionate about what they're doing, they
Yeah.
need to really care for the customers. We need to train them well, and then like we need to just do right by the customer through our support people. And I think people get like, first of all, they get really happy and delighted by that. But then if something goes wrong with customer support, they're also super angry and pissed off. So I think that is just one important thing to get right. And then I do think that's also why people stay with Shippo. Like if something, like I've done support myself, and like back then our product was probably the buggiest. I remember people telling me that something wasn't working, or like something didn't meet their expectations, and then when you fix it for them and like talk to them about this, like they forgive you that the product was wrong, they made a mistake. And that's another big one. Just being, if we fucked up, we fucked up. I had to, like, in an unfortunate situation yesterday, apologize to a customer and just say, like, we fucked up, I'm really sorry. And I think it's the
Yeah,
way
I
to
think
go.
like fess up to your mistakes when you make them, and obviously you will make them, and people like that, honesty and transparency. Actually, something that didn't occur to me, but given the fact that it's like definitely a topic du jour, and especially in like the woke culture we're in today, like you're a minority immigrant woman, like has that had an impact for better or worse on your entrepreneurial journey in any way, shape, or form?
It's a hard question because I don't know what it would have been like if I wasn't a minority immigrant woman. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think on my end, I've been really lucky that everyone I've worked with, just like, they've been incredibly supportive. And I just remember talking about like Jeff Clavia early on. Like I remember writing the press release for like our seed round myself, because we didn't have a PR person. And I wrote a press release, and it was like female founder of Shippo, Laura Behrens, woo, blah blah. And Jeff reviewed it, and Jeff was like, well, like, looking at your name, people will know that you're a female founder. You don't need to highlight it again. And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But I think that sort of attitude was really like, everyone I've worked with early on was just like so supportive and so helpful. And there was never a moment where I felt like it was, I don't know, like a negative. And then over time, I want to say what helped was probably that I've gotten a bit older. Like when I started the company, I was very young. And I remember like people asking me, like partners asking me, like, are you even like old enough to sign this contract? I'm like, haha, that's it's very funny. Of course I'm old enough to sign this contract. But I think that was much more of a thing that I was young and I looked young compared to, and like by the way, I still look young, but compared to
Interesting. So
anything
so
else.
you haven't had any, in a way, negative experiences from being a minority female founder. Why do you think there's such like news around the fact that it's seemingly way harder for women and women founders or female founders in general?
Yeah, I think it's like it is harder for women founders, is like what I want to say. And like part of it is also I have a male co-founder, and I think the data also suggests if it's two female founders, it's even harder. I think for us, like when I look at Shippo, like what I hope that we can do is like show investors a really awesome success story where they can help pattern match in the future, and where everyone who took a bet on Shippo early on like walks out and, I don't know, advances on the Midas list or whatever VCs are proud of. And they can later on, when they see other founders that look like me, say like, okay, we've had a positive experience back then and we're going to do this again. So I hope that will like that's something we can provide in, or we can help with in the industry. And then the data is just, the data is just not been super great in terms of women founders getting funding. And yeah, by the way, it's also something I am trying to be actively helpful in. If there are any women, female founders, or any founders who are looking for angel investing, I've been starting to angel invest a
Cool.
little bit.
I don't know if you actually put money in our mini fund, but you probably should. This way you see exposure. You see the 100+ companies, or 200 companies we invest every year. This way you get a sense of like what are the trends, and gives you access to more deals. As you think through your angel investing strategy, we probably should talk about like what is the best strategy, how do you make it useful. because I've navigated being both an entrepreneur and an investor for a long time.
Mhm.
One
Yep.
more question. So you made a
Very
comment at the
cool.
very beginning, like, you were in Switzerland and you were like having this dream of Silicon Valley. And I guess the question is the dream still alive? Like, it looks from afar that like people are moving to Austin and Miami and like it's like San Francisco is falling apart. It's like too expensive and there's crime and homelessness, etc. I obviously don't live there, so is there truth to it? Is it or is it still like a land of opportunity and the place where people should go to dream?
Yeah. Okay. So I think before I answer that, like I do remember that when I came to San Francisco first and like walked around Soma to try to find the companies that I was interviewing at, it was not at all what I expected. Like reading about it on TechCrunch and like in my mind, I imagined it to be like, I don't know, Singapore. And it turns out that Soma does not look like Singapore. So I think there's always that strange discrepancy between just startups and what the rest of San Francisco looked like. And it's been, I mean, I think it's gotten worse over the pandemic. Like, as you said, lots of people moved away. I think most of the people that I know moved away somewhat temporarily with the intention of maybe coming back in the future again. And yeah, it's a unfortunately not that well, like that city is unfortunately not that well run. And it's, you can tell it. Yeah. I don't know if people are, I think people are coming back. Like I myself am not in San Francisco right now, but I have the intention to go back first thing in 2022. And I've been going back to San Francisco once a month. And like there are a lot, like wherever I go,
Yeah.
my calendar is full of meetings. There are a lot of people to still meet in person in San
So
Francisco.
so where are
So
you
it
now?
feels
Is
like
it
it'll
like a new
probably come
office or
back.
just remote working? Okay.
Oh, I'm in Ireland right now. I have been in Ireland for a little bit. We just hired an Irish site lead who will kick off just European hiring, and I'm excited for that. Yeah, I think San Francisco has just also become terribly expensive in terms of just hiring, and everyone's competing for the same talent pool. So I'm given that my founder, my co-founder and I were both European, it's we want to just make sure we get access
Well,
to the
especially as
European
you're
talent pool as
building
well.
out your European expansion, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Anything we didn't cover that we should have covered or touched upon?
I think when we chatted about this before recording, we we're briefly talking about like co-founders as well. And I think that's just another good one. Like I'm really glad that I have a co-founder. Mostly it's just a very, it is a, how would you describe it? It's a journey that you'd rather take with someone else. And it's a kind of journey like team members, you can't, the relationship between a co-founder and a team member, even a very senior team member, there's always a little bit of it's always different. And just having someone who will like stick around and you're in this together and nothing can spook them is so important. So I've been very, very happy having a co-founder. I want to say, like, if people are here and listening and they're the co-founder who's not the CEO, like I've seen my co-founder go through such an incredible journey of like taking on different roles at the company and finding the right role for him. And that's been really cool to watch. Just it's totally okay and normal over time that the co-founders who are not the CEOs, they find just their sweet spot in the business and feel like focus on, they don't even have to be executives, just focus on something where they can add the most value.
Perfect. I think that's it. I think we've covered kind of everything. Well, thank you for joining us today. This was wonderful. Lots of lessons, and it'll be great to see you continue in this journey from, a unicorn to a decacorn, and perhaps even a super $100 billion unicorn in the future. And yeah, thank you for
Fingers
inspiring all
crossed.
the founders out there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And thank you to the kind person with such a complimentary comment. I really
Thank you,
appreciated
Laura.
that. Thank you.